Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, Madness, season finale, season 1 wrap up. Tiger King, if you haven't watched or listened to the podcast of the first Tiger King episode, check that out real quick. I'll link it in the show notes. We are going to discuss Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, Madness in full spoilers. So just wanted to put that heads up. First of all, I just want to give a big shout out to all the first responders and healthcare workers worldwide. I can't thank you enough for being on the front line of this quote-unquote pandemic. Everyone in the world is experiencing different sides of what's happening, the lockdown, this worldwide lockdown. So I just wanted to say I'm extremely appreciative to all of you all who are on the front line. We could obviously not get through this without you. So today, the Tiger King season finale wrap up. Holy Santa Claus shit. I was absolutely floored watching this show. I thought the first episode was crazy, talking about the major 3 characters that are focused on in the first episode. But holy Santa Claus shit. I was just like, where did these documentary makers find this eccentric cast of people? Like, everyone they interviewed was so gripping to listen to. I wanted to hear all of the stories from all of them. I wanted 10 episodes from this, but I think that this was substantial at 7 episodes. And by the way, I think I might have said it was 8 episodes at the beginning of first episode. I'm just correcting myself. And if there's any corrections that I need to put in place, they will be done in another podcast or in the show notes, or I'll reference them in an aftercast. Aftercast is where we talk about behind the scenes of the Lucky Doll podcast and talk about just feedback we're getting from everyone behind the scenes, either on YouTube or email or comments or whatever. But anyway, we are discussing Tiger King, the 2020 true crime documentary television series about the life of Joseph Maldonado Passage. It was released on Netflix March 20, 2020. The series focuses on the small but deeply interconnected society of the big cat conservationists like Carol Baskin, owner of Big Cat Rescue, and collectors such as Maldonado Passage, aka Joe Exotic, who Baskin accuses of abusing and exploiting the wild animals. So the first episode, I already kind of did a recap of it, and I told you, I was like, these are the craziest people I've ever heard of. I can't wait to watch the next episode. Incredibly directed. I did write down some notes about the show. This is going like worldwide #1 to the charts, mostly because I think everyone wants to get their head out of the COVID-19 situation. I think seeing such a big shit show on such an accessible platform such as Netflix, which makes it that much more accessible, the guy is incredibly memeable. When I say memeable, I mean it's, I've seen 100 different Carol Baskins killed her husband, changed my mind memes or something like that, or Joe Exotic for president, or just random obscure memes all over social media regarding this guy. And he's incredibly memeable. I mean, there's so many aspects about the guy, from whether the fact that Joe Exotic thinks he's a country singer, he thinks he's a he thinks he's not exploiting the animals. All of these different people in this documentary are all pointing the finger at each other, saying they're this, they're that, they're this, they're that, I'm this, I'm good, they're not. Everyone's a fucking hypocrite. But once you find out by the end of the documentary is simply that. I mean, everyone in this documentary is involved in what I'd say a 7-episode car wreck, train wreck. It is incredible to watch every episode unfold. So I'm kind of just dancing around it a little bit in spoiler free, but we're going to really talk more in spoilers. I did not, okay, so going into this a little bit more in depth, I wrote down some notes from episodes 6 and 7. So I found out by watching the majority of it, most of the series is teasing him in jail, but him being a tiger trainer is almost one of the least interesting aspects of this guy's life. I mean, this guy has been through the fucking roller coaster when it came down to his Joe Exotic. They cover, him growing up and not being accepted by his family, all the way through him being like 60 years old and almost being somewhat of a quote-unquote cult leader. I mean, we really do find out all of these different characters have a really shady past. We find out the Bhagavan, Doc Antle, the animal trainer who founded a 50-acre animal preserve in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, trains animals for Hollywood films. And that guy's kind of like the big shit on the street. And he really tries to paint himself as, one of the nicer guys on the block, but the documentary really goes into detail in a way that makes it look like he's got several wives. He has, polygamy going on just as much as everyone else in this. Everyone has this crazy sexual exotic desires all by surrounding the tigers. It's almost like the tigers are set dressing for them to get even more stuff, to get more money, to get more girls, to get more fame, to get more everything else but what you would need to help the animals. In episode 6, we also find out more about this plot to kill Carol Baskin. Now, Carol Baskin is got a shady past as well. I mean, I think it was like episode 3 or 4. Episode 3, they really go into a depth of showing what happened to her multi-million-dollar worth husband. He feels like he's going to go missing. It happens to actually go missing, but there's a setup to make it possibly look like he went to Costa Rica, and he'd always talked about it. He was also very promiscuous in ways. Lots of background stuff, lots of craziness, lots of drama, a lot of juicy-ass drama, and there seems to be, some sort of motive for her to have wanted to acquire all of this stuff. And his death certificate ended up showing up to saying, if anything happens to me or if I end up disappearing. I thought that was big enough. Like, what the fuck? How did they, like, why was that not looked into more? Why was the van not looked into more? The detective work on this was almost sloppy as shit. I felt like we were the detective when we were going through all of the clues. I mean, the way this documentary is laid out is not exactly in Carol Baskin's favor. As in, it's not really in Joe Exotic's favor either, although I think they are kind of leaning on Joe's side for the majority of the episodes. I will say towards the end, it really showed the more heinous things that Joe was trying to do and how he was treating the animals. And that overall, this documentary does not focus in on how the animals are being treated or animal abuse of that sort. They do show us a little bit and imply it in areas, show the animals being aggravated and whatnot, and they talk about some of the animals being shot toward the end. I was like, damn, I didn't know it was going to go that far. And they even go to the extent of saying, Joe had skeletons in his backyard as well. So it was like, oh my gosh. And this is stuff they didn't immediately release off the first couple episodes. So the documentary is very well laid out in the way that they are just sprinkling all of these bits and pieces of information. And just about like the 30-minute mark, some like mic drop happens and you're like, wait, what the fuck? And it just makes you have to watch the next episode. So continuing on the notes that I had for this, the Google Path that they showed, I can't believe that they had, I don't even know why this hadn't really gone through my head, but Joe had gone to the extent of finding where Carol was riding her bike and whatnot and talking about taking her out. This guy, I don't know. You either got to be crazy or stupid or a big combination of both to advertise that you want to kill somebody that much. I mean, we saw him shooting dummies and talking about Carol Baskin's not going to be. I'm not going to be happy till Carol Baskin's in dead or something like that. Or he told multiple people, was asking multiple people. He was not shy about the fact that he was not keen about Carol Baskin. Now, he did admit that I think that they both were giving each other business by doing this. Now, so it's a little bit weird. And Carol Baskin, the main thing about her, I don't want to defend her at all. I don't know if I have a strong opinion if she did take her husband out. I mean, the facts do not look good, and what her the daughters are saying and the previous wife is saying, there's just a lot of evidence that this does not look good, and, as well as people in his court. Now, Carol, the fact is, she didn't look sad. She didn't seem to have emotion, or she didn't seem to care to want him back in a way. I know that the marriage was kind of going south, but it really didn't imply that it was that bad, in my opinion. Now, they were talking about possible motive or something like that, and she would be able to get all of the money, essentially, and that's exactly what she did. So, and gave the kids like 10% of whatever. So I don't know what they say. No one knew how much her husband was worth, like 10 to 20 million or something like that, and everyone kind of had an obscure background, and it was very interesting when it came down to that. But anyways, the fact is, the documentary was not in favor for Carol Baskin, in my opinion. Then again, everything she said and everything she did not look that good. She kept saying Joe's this, Doc Antle's that, all these other big all these other animal rescue places and zoos are just breeding animals and using them to exploit them. Now, I'm not saying that they're not, but what she looked like she was doing was no different. This is just the fact that she had a nonprofit. And so it really dug deep under us as a viewer of why we didn't give a shit about Carol Baskin. Like, every time Joe's like, she's the dirtiest, most heinous woman ever. Yeah, but the fact is, they're showing her being all nice and acting like an angel and doing, this, that, and the other. I was like, I don't know about all that, Excuse me, I need to get a little coffee. All right. So, yeah, the documentary was not in favor for Carol Baskin. I'll say that up front. It did not make her look good, and she didn't have a really good explanation for where he went or if she was missing him at all. It just felt like, okay, so she just moved on. And kind of the same thing with Joe's situation. He lost one of his husbands. It turns out he kind of seduced these young men at a very young age, very similar to how the Bhagavan was doing with these young women, and paying them very little, terrible living conditions, and ends up marrying them and keeping and supplying them with pot and meth. And I think that Travis was one of the main parts of Joe Exotic's life that was keeping him grounded. And once that, I think that unraveled around episode 5 or something like that, it was like, holy shit, there's life or death situations that are coming up on this true crime documentary now. And the fact is, he shot himself right in front of the campaign manager. I was like, God dang, this is literally, you could not make this up. You just could not write this. It's insane. It writes itself as a movie. It's just absolutely insane. So you find out a lot more about the drugs, the behind the scenes of the marriage, that the guys might actually have been straight. They just were doing anything to do what, to stay high or do whatever they wanted. Like, I think they said that the other husband, I can't remember his name, John, I think, the guy with the messed up teeth who has now really nice teeth, is, I think they said that Joe was buying him guns and buying him camo stuff, buying him ATVs and whatnot, and basically doing the same thing for Travis, just with whatever Travis wanted. It was they're running small cults in a way. I don't really know how much better to say it. I didn't think about it like that at first, but then the more they were describing it, I was like, this does not look good, Let me plug this up real quick. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Oh, damn Carol Baskin. The one thing about this is it does take your mind off of the craziness that's happening in the real world to see something else crazy happening. I will say that. He's also got a self-written country song for every occasion. I just got to say that. There are dubs that are happening over his voice. I don't have whoever sung his songs, but he's not actually singing them. There's people that are doing it for him. So just wanted to give people a heads up. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, he's a lot better than I was expecting. Well, he's lip syncing. So just giving everyone 101. It's actually two guys that are singing for him. Let's see. It was also really exploitive to have that song and talk about Travis really inappropriately at his funeral, and his family did not seem to enjoy that. I don't know. It was... I don't really know much more to say more than that. I'm sorry that, from just the craziness that's happening all around this guy. Let me see. I've come to the conclusion exotic animal people are crazy, from the Jeff Lowe guy and his fucking hitman. Dude, that guy is definitely got some blood on his hands. I mean, all these people seem like they're running in just a bad crowd. From the girl that lost her hand, to the guys that lost his legs, to the guy that, I mean, at the very end, that one guy had a fucking drinking problem from hell. I don't know if they were acting it up or whatnot, but that guy was fucked up. Like, and they had a Smirnoff bottle in every scene they were showing him when he was having to testify against Joe right before he was going out. Let me see. Yeah, so Joe lost the election. He lost both husbands. He lost his Tiger Park. He's lost his freedom. Carol drove him to drain his folks dry after he copyrighted her business, which was so stupid. Why would you do that? This just so dumb. What do you say? Big Cat Rescue Entertainment with the same fucking logo. Doesn't even make sense. The Fire lost the producers that show. That was in episode 4. I would be like, I'd be so distraught. I couldn't even think about what would happen. It just makes me want to go back up everything I have and put it in a completely different building. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, could not even think about that. Let me see. Jeff Lowe is almost literally a bad guy from a movie. And the way they introduce him, I think Double Toast should actually talk about this. They have that same introduction for all of these people. They are just doing the slow pan up of the person while someone's describing them. And them walking in slow-mo. I don't know. It's a little generic now. I'm kind of ready for a new intro now. Reenactments with Hitman, Glover, the Hitman. Were they going through like reenactments with Hitman, the Glover guy? It was kind of hard to tell. It looked like they were trying to do reenactments, but with the real guy. Not sure. That was in episode 6. Episode 7. Okay, so the majority of this season is really excellent. I did have a couple quibbles when it came to the end. I thought I was going to be like, holy fuck, yes, yeah, ooh, can't wait to listen to the podcast on Tiger King and everything. So first off, the podcast that they had 6 episodes for free on, I think it was Wondery or whatever. They took all 6 episodes of the podcast Tiger King off, They knocked it down to 3 and apparently added ads and made the other 3 podcasts for it. You have to pay for. So mixed feelings about that. I don't mind the ads, but if you're gonna have them for free for a week and then all of a sudden take them down, that's a little bit shady. So I don't know if I'd support listening to the Tiger King podcast. Although I will say up front, the first episode and a half I listened to, that does touch on more of the animal abuse in it. So just kind of giving everybody a heads up with that. Episode 7 did present the problem I felt with the documentary, and it is coming down to the fact that Joe Exotic is the most interesting person, and teasing him in jail was done on purpose. We wanted to see the whole documentary. Holy shit, how'd he get in jail? Let's talk to him once he's in jail. Let's see the court case. Well, you don't really get much of the court case. Most of the court case is shown in drawings and from follow-ups of people walking into the courtroom. They talk about it from the news perspective, how the news producers were handling it and how the people around Joe were handling it, but we could not really actually talk to Joe. So the problem, I would say, with the majority of how this documentary ended was the lack of court footage. There's nothing the documentaries could have done. It just really emphasizes how powerful it is to be in a courtroom in some of these documentaries that we watch. I just watched The Staircase recently, and being able to watch, the actions of the juror, the judge, and everybody in there feels very vital to understanding the court case. And so we got it all through drawings and before and afters from other people, and it looked like hidden cams of some of the undercover people that went. I don't remember the guy that went undercover, but anyways, I think the biggest problem with this final episode is we get probably the least amount of Joe that we get in the whole season, and this series is hinged on the back of the main character, Joe. Having him locked up, unable to talk to, unable to say anything is, difficult. So we get basically no court footage, only drawings. We got a real life Kim Wexler. I was like, holy shit, this lady walked straight off of Better Call Saul. This was the FBI agent that was taking Joe down, and I really loved her energy. I was like, wow, she's powerful just in the way she's presenting herself, and loved how they were showing it. What is the guy's name? I'm gonna pull it up in 2 seconds. It's the new guy that owned the strip club at the beginning. One thing I was not expecting about this series was how important everyone was going to be. Like, everyone they showed within the series seemed to have a very vital role. Even the guy, Tim Stark, they showed him like very early in the show, and I was like, oh, this guy's just kind of far off in nowhere. And it turns out this guy comes back and starts working with Jeff Lowe, and they become partners, and they find out that Jeff is just kind of using Tim. We don't even know if Jeff has any money. He's just kind of some sort of player, and he's just kind of exploiting the Tigers so that he doesn't have to take care of them, but he uses them. He was taking them up to hotel rooms and, showing them off to girls and having sex with all of them. The girls, not the Tigers, but Jeff Lowe, he was kind of a piece of work. Okay, so the guy's name was James Garretson, who went undercover for the FBI, and really, he was the rat. This was straight up like FBI shit. I was like, holy fuck. So I was really not expecting that. Let me see what else they got. Let me see. Yeah, Eric Cowie was the one that I was talking about. He was really fucked up at the very end. He just does not look like he's handling his time away from the zoo very well, even though the time at the zoo was not that great. They just say countless hours of work, hundreds of thousands of dollars to feed all these animals. just insane. And it really became apparent that the animals during this documentary, 90% of this is not about the animals. They are just set dressing, and they are just kind of an entity to have, to show statue. Look what I have, what you can't. Everyone at the end is pissed at everyone. Pointing fingers. Joe's ratting everybody out, saying Doc Antle was murdering young cubs after the 12 weeks that they're useful. They just become like a liability and expensive. And at the very end, you really get a sense of Joe and his mindset towards the tigers. It really became about exploiting the tigers. Once he got in trouble, I said at the first episode I didn't think he was going to hurt the tigers. I ended up being wrong. They found this literal skeletons in the back of his yard. They show one of the instances of the tigers actually attacking. I think there's only a couple instances of the tigers getting aggressive with the tamers. One obviously was when Kelsey lost her hand, but also when Jeff was taking down that lion. I was like, oh shit, this is intense. This is, I think they, obviously have the music to make it go with it, but it's like, oh fuck, Jeff is not afraid of this fucking massive ass lion. But another thing is, what was the animal? Sorry, it might have been a tiger or liger. One of them had grabbed Joe, and he's kind of pulling his leg toward him. And it's like, oh fuck, is he taking Joe down? And this is like the first time we've really seen any aggression towards Joe. And Joe has said explicitly to the cameraman that he would kill he would kill a human before he would kill any of his tigers. And we just find out that's a flat lie. And his cover for it is that the only way to euthanize it is, put it to sleep or shoot it. So it's just like, I don't know, man. That is just not good. I don't remember if he said there might have been one cub. I don't remember. It was hard to listen to, honestly. And that was when I really started to tune out of the Joe Exotic phase. I think by the end of the series, the majority of people were going to pretty much sour on the majority of the characters that are featured in it. I mean, it is kind of a roller coaster ride and fun to watch at first, but then it really turns sour. It really reminds me of this, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul characters, of how the spiral of somebody can just turn you to the worst. So, I did think that last episode was a little bit weird with the eye of the tiger fucking coming out of the nowhere with fucking James Garretson's ass on it. I was like, I didn't need to see that. Yeah, it's very apparent that the animals are almost forgotten, and I think they do touch on it at the very end with the credits talking about, the population and the big cat act and not being passed yet. I'm curious about that. I do want to hear like a full opinion. Did y'all like Tiger King and whatnot? Did y'all agree with what some of the animal conservationists were doing? I mean, it was crazy to think that the animal conservationists or someone hired by PETA or something like that, like Joe said, would go burn down his shed full of alligators and crocodiles or whatever the hell. I couldn't imagine that, but I don't know. People are crazy and have done crazier things. Overall, it's a very impressive documentary, from the direction to the style of characters. I mean, just even the fucking attire. It's bizarre. The ending could have benefited from a court scene or two. Other than that, unique story. This unique, rich story proves life is stranger than fiction. I can almost guarantee there will be a movie. Double Toasted, one of my favorite podcasts, mentioned that the Coen brothers should absolutely produce or direct something like this, write something like this. It would be probably the exact amount of drama and comedy you'd need. Think about like Fargo or something. Or just give me something. I'm ready to see some actors in this, although I don't think it'll be even as good as this real life take is. I don't know. I would be very interested to see it. I also want to see a follow-up on these characters. These are extremely interesting characters. Most of them are highly compelling. At the very end, we find out the Bhagavan's like raided and whatnot by the FBI, like craziness. Even he says, like, I'm not trying to say shit that I'm gonna have to repeat on for the defense attorney. Like, I think that some of these people, I was very surprised at how much these people said on the cameras. I almost guarantee you none of these people saying this to the camera for this documentary knew that it was going to get as big as it is. I mean, if Carol Baskin isn't one of the most hated people trending, in the last 2 weeks, then I don't know what is. I mean, the news just went off. All the pop culture news, everyone that's not covering COVID-19 news seems just completely and utterly obsessed with some Tiger King. So let me give some news updates on these. I'm not really going to go any facts, or these are probably mostly opinions, but this is just on the Tiger King news on Google. It says, TMZ says, Tiger King may help police solve disappearance of Carol Baskin's missing husband. That would be the most insane thing if, this documentary is the one to open up more cases. I almost guarantee that, there's some information out there that would help. I mean, how many times has a documentary opened up real life investigations and influenced real life investigations? I mean, just think of like The Jinx, think of like Making a Murder. I mean, Netflix has done a pretty good job with in the Ted Bundy one as well. It definitely wasn't as compelling as this. And I will say the one thing that this is benefiting from, among other things, this specific documentary, is, with the exception of a couple of small cases and of course the animal abuse that's obviously kind of curtailed on the side, there aren't too many parts that are regarding, like an actual crime. Like, most of these true crimes are about somebody actually being dead. And thank goodness, for the most part, I think most people would agree that it's good that nobody died. I'm not sure if, Carol Baskin is 100% innocent, but I don't wish death upon people. I'm just saying, it's kind of easier to watch a documentary when there isn't actually someone that has suffered or a family that has suffered. I just watched the Aaron Hernandez documentary not too long ago, and it was enlightening to learn about both sides of the story, relatively. But there's also that is, the fact is that someone lost their life, and you are getting a ounce of entertainment value, but the majority is for factual information. So that's why I always say that I enjoy true crime to an extent. So with saying that, I think this does benefit from not actually having people have died, but more or less people have been exposed. So let's see where Tiger King takes us. Let's see, a couple months from now. Let me know how everyone is doing. I wanted to just cover Tiger King. It's an incredible piece of media. It's something that can't really be compared to too many other things. I did talk about the other podcast that we had covered. Let me know if I can share your business. I am offering a couple of advertising spaces that are, for small businesses that are being affected by the coronavirus. It's something that we on the podcast can do relatively easy and on low budget. And I just want to help somebody out there, or somebody's that have a small business that could use some help at this time. So, thank you for watching, listening, LuckyDog Podcast. We could not do this podcast without your help. Check out the rest of the LuckyDog Podcast on SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, all the popular social medias, Twitch. Email theluckydogpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to support the podcast, paypal.me/theluckydogpodcast. Links are all in the description. If you want podcasts early, I drop them early on YouTube and at LuckyDog Podcast, and I drop weekly podcasts on audio form via SoundCloud or iTunes or whatever your popular podcast player is on Tuesdays. So thank you for listening, watching, whatever you're doing, LuckyDog Podcast. We could not do this without you, and Tiger saw a man. I saw a tiger, and the tiger saw a man.